Weight loss is something almost everyone wants. Everyone wants to look better, look slimmer, and yet weight problems are skyrocketing today. And so many people who struggle with their weight struggle with gaining it back the moment they lose their habits or they gain it back even if they don't break their habits. Also, there's so much confusion around why some diets work, why so many diets work, and so many of them aren't optimal. And I'm going to break this down for you today. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Emanuela Urbani. I'm a health and nutrition practitioner, and I've helped over 100 men and women discover what optimal health really feels like for them using nature first and biophysics-based strategies. If you are not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit subscribe, like if you enjoy this video, leave me a comment, and let me know what you think. All right, let's debunk weight loss and weight loss diets, and let's go over the cold, hard truth. I am going over this in much greater detail in my school community, Quantum Thrive, because I personally have had so much experience with weight gain and weight loss, both on diets that are optimally healthy and diets that are not. And as someone who isn't the person who's always slim, who does have an issue for so long with weight, I want to break it down for you in a way that's realistic and in a way that makes sense. So you can put all this information together and stop getting confused by all the massive flood of everybody trying to sell the weight loss program, why different people get different results doing different things, etc., etc., etc. Okay. There are many diets that work to lose weight. In fact, if you actually truly follow, most diets will help you lose weight. If you are extremely leptin resistant and you have extreme problems with metabolism, many diets that restrict calories will actually cause you to gain weight instead of lose weight, as was my experience. However, many things like being successful on keto, if you actually can be, and don't suffer consequences from lowering your carbohydrate content so much because your mitochondria are trashed. And that's why that's working and not working for you, I should say. Or you are successful losing weight on keto and then you have an off day here and there and you gain weight back right away. The moment you eat some bread, the moment you have, a little treat, the moment you live a little bit. And also, what about the difference between eating every 2 to 3 hours and having no more than 3 meals a day, and the better weight loss programs out there that perhaps emphasize 5-hour gaps between meals, emphasize protein, emphasize having balance around your plate, but aren't seasonal. So you probably experience great benefits from doing these types of diets, and you feel a lot better, your inflammation's lower, your blood markers are better, but you haven't been able to reverse a lot of the issues that you're hoping to reverse, or there's still lingering things that don't help. There's a million ways to lose weight because at the end of the day, you can force your body to either drop fat temporarily, or you can actually be nice to your body, reteach it rhythms, and somewhat emphasize circadian rhythms, like, focusing on animal proteins and having vegetables in there, whether seasonal or not, but having a kind of balance, spreading out the meals, limited to a certain number of meals, and reducing the intake, for example, will help you feel better and lose weight, but it's not the optimal diet, depending on where you live, for longevity and eliminating chronic disease or preventing it in the first place. I have tried 100 different things, and I want to share with you just a little bit about my weight loss journey, and I'm going to share in very much detail in my private community, Quantum Thrive. So if you want to join us in there and learn all about it and how you can apply this to yourself to both look hot and reverse the issues that you have, then I've put the link in the description of this video. So I was typically slim-ish, but never as slim as my sister growing up. Then I got a horse when I was 16 and I started spending a ton of time outdoors with my horse. And in doing so, I dropped weight and became very slim and maintained it effortlessly despite all of the other things that I struggled with health-wise. And if you know my story, it's a long list, until one day I started dating and got scared about getting pregnant, didn't know anything, was kind of young, and went on the birth control pill. It was 9 months of hell. And as soon as I came off of it, couldn't eat, was nauseous all the time, lost a ton of weight, was skinnier than I'd ever been in my life. And then when I started being able to eat again, I had all of these problems and I just put on weight like nobody's business. And no matter what I did, I didn't understand really that much, but cutting calories, counting calories, if I ate 1,200 calories a day, I would just go up in weight. And I had serious blood sugar issues. And of course, at the same time, I wasn't eating optimally at all. I was vegetarian. That was before it had introduced meat. And then I introduced fish and seafood, and I ate it heavily because I became into West Sunny Price and still didn't really lose weight. I would go back and forth, maybe lose a little bit, gain a little bit. And I tried keto, which I couldn't do, unfortunately, because my mitochondria were trash and I didn't know that at the time. So as soon as I would attempt to cut it to the point of ketosis, I would get extremely dizzy, feel just horrible, couldn't do anything, and couldn't get over it. I couldn't get over it, and it would enable binge behaviors and disrupt my sleep even more, and I was already an insomniac. So, big mess. Eventually, I ran into a program which I loved at the time until it cost me so much. And it's very popular now. It's called the Gina Livy program. Basically, I ate certain structured meals and I ate about every 2 to 3 hours. And at first, I definitely lost weight because I was able to follow it. I wasn't cutting calories and it worked slowly. It took me 2 years to lose 22 pounds. I looked better, felt better. I was like, this is great. I'm losing weight until it became very hard to then have fun with my family because every time I went out, I wouldn't be able to function for more than 2 hours without food. I couldn't delay a meal, delay a snack. If I didn't bring something with me, it was very time consuming and I was no longer able to eat a full meal in one sitting. I had to only eat a small amount. I would be full, couldn't eat anymore, and then would experience symptoms. And it was very frustrating, extremely frustrating. And also, I couldn't get past that. I had more than 20 pounds to lose, and it took me 2 years, and I couldn't get past that. And then, when I discovered circadian biology, when I started doing all these things, I was doing them for a different reason. I was also following the leptin reset in a very specific way, and I was doing it because of everything else, mostly for my daughter. And everything changed and I lost weight and I looked better than I'd ever had. And I wasn't trying to. It was easy. It was effortless. I could go out again and never have those symptoms again. It was really great. And also at the same time, after that, I maintained my weight for a certain period of time until I had a loss. And I ended up going to food for emotions. And I broke one of the cardinal rules of maintaining your weight, and I ate at night. And that struggle after that began to disrupt my weight loss. And then I added more stressors to it, more environmental stressors, including non-native EMFs, which caused me to fluctuate even more, going down, going up, depending on where I was, struggling with eating at night and cravings because of my exposure and because I wasn't following the basic rules. There's many cardinal rules, and I'm going to tell you basically just a few of them. And one of them is that you always have to eat your breakfast at sunrise. If you have a long history of struggling with weight loss, you're not going to be able to break that. And if you eat very disruptive to your circadian rhythm, meaning if you start eating a lot of bananas, bread, and things like that out of season, or they don't grow where you live, or you go too long without eating, you have snacks, which always disrupt your circadian rhythm. And of course, most critically, you're eating after sunset. Anytime you eat after sunset, unless you're the opposite when it comes to your weaknesses, do not involve gaining weight. If that's the case, great. If not, if you're eating after sunset, it's just a recipe for disaster, no matter what the reason is. And you're going to gain weight. Simple as that. And then when you stop that, you're going to lose weight eventually if you follow the rest of the rules. The other thing is that your body hold on to weight in your abdomen. And I'm not talking about like a lot of weight. If you're like seriously overweight, there's tons of risks to that. But if you are like a few pounds overweight, like 5 to 10 pounds overweight, the first bit of that weight retention is your body attempting to save fat for the regeneration of your brain once you put yourself in the right environment. But you never get into the right environment, then that becomes a spiral out of control situation where you are now definitely unhealthily overweight and you're leptin resistant. And as far as calories go, I'm never a proponent of cutting calories, but you do need to eat less than being perfectly satisfied. Because when you're leptin resistant, calories matter. When you're leptin sensitive and you use cold therapy in a certain way, then calories no longer matter and you burn anything as free heat and you don't gain weight. But if you disrupt your circadian rhythm or your leptin signaling enough, and you'll become leptin resistant again, and then all of a sudden the extra food you're eating is going to make you gain weight. That's kind of the gist of it. And I myself have had my own struggles with that, like I said, when emotionally I can break those rules. And when I do, being that I have struggled with weight for too long, and being that once my horse passed away, I was no longer moving and put all of my energy and effort into work, literally from sunup to sundown or past, then of course, movement is necessary. If you know me, you know that I'm not a proponent of working out until you have addressed your fatigue, until you have addressed your energy, and until you have addressed your leptin resistance at least a little bit, unless you're not very leptin resistant, you don't have an issue with weight, etc., etc. There's, of course, individual situations that apply to this, but for most, especially women that I deal with in this situation, I'm like movement only, yoga, walking, qigong, whatever, something that makes you feel energized and amazing and isn't a hormetic stressor. Not enough of one. Instead, you want to focus on cold therapy. The other key thing here is that when you lose weight, we all know this, you empty fat from your fat cells, but you can also empty toxins, and that fat cell, that leptin resistant fat cell, the shell of it still remains. And that makes you actually harder for you to become leptin sensitive permanently. You want to kill those fat cells, make them die. And there's only a few ways to do that. You get them sucked out of you, like surgery, which I'm not a proponent of, or you use cold thermogenesis to kill them. Cold therapy, done in the right way with a proper adaptation process, actually destroys those fat cells so they don't exist anymore. If you've ever heard of CoolSculpting or Zeltiq, it's the same thing, except, they're making you pay for it and you're doing it in a controlled environment and you're using cold dirt temperatures with metal, which makes the process happen faster. But you can do that at home with the right temperature, the right cold adaptation process, and a bathtub. I did. It was a huge part of me not only successfully losing weight, but tightening my skin. That and the amount of time I spent in the sun, in the red and infrared light, especially noticeably, visibly tightened my skin in my abdomen because I do have 2 kids and I've gained and lost weight. It's something to think about. So that's kind of the truth to weight loss. There's 100 ways to get there. Most of them won't reverse all of your issues. And remember, it's not the diet that's reversing your issue, and it's not the practitioner you're working with that's reversing your disease. It's you. It's your body. It's you learning how to activate your body's own regeneration and healing capabilities. And for me, that above all else is the most important, because we all know people who are skinny and unhealthy, and we all know people, especially today, who got the you-know-what or have been highly exposed to way too many people in the you-know-what, like in an emergency setting, and they're at extremely high risk of dying, getting turbo cancer if they lose weight or if they're skinny. The skinny people are the ones dropping dead and the fit ones. And it's got to do with the way fat protects you. So there's something to be said about that too. And there's definitely something to be said about women needing to have more body fat than we tend to see in, like, say, the I don't know, the models or whatever of today. Not that you can't have an extremely svelte and beautiful figure, but that you should hold on to more fat than, 16 to 18%. You probably want to sit around 20, 22, something like that, body fat percentage, which, most BMI measurements are highly inaccurate. And please, if you're using a scale, it doesn't mean anything because it can't tell. There's specific ways to do this, and they usually cost quite a bit of money and they're not super accurate. So essentially is you don't want to be too skinny either. And in this world where we have shamed the process of desiring to be healthy and slimmer, and also at the same time confused the idea of beauty with the idea of health. So I don't want to confuse those two. I'm just here to give you the cold, hard truth about weight and weight loss. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. Give me a like, comment, subscribe to my channel. I look forward to catching you on the next one.